And I hit it. And we are definitely preparing to go live. And we are live right now. Ladies, all I want to say is thank you so much for this self love conversation. You guys know that our conversations that we have here are real conversations, and they are focused on making sure that you understand the importance of living your highest and truest self. And the lady that we have here with us now has an amazing story that I really want you to hear from her mouth, because I believe that when people tell their journey and when they relive the journey, they put so much passion into it. You really get to see the power of what it means to really transform and change your life. So I want you to meet, DeAndra Harmony. She is a breast cancer survivor. She is a motivator for women. She is a change agent. She is all of those things that it is possible for your life. When you are in a situation where you know that there's nothing but God, there's nothing but
Yes.
transformation. So,
Yes.
DeAndra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for interviewing with us. And, before we begin, I have to say that I did read your story. I did take a look at your website, and I saw, the just reading like the bio part. I said to myself, I said, you know what? This is what transformation looks like,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So I
Yes.
want you to start from the beginning and tell your story so that the ladies know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll let you have the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and for that introduction.
Absolutely.
It has been quite a journey. I have been saying lately, my 2020 started in 2019
Hmm.
because I went through every major life change event in a 6 month period except for birth and death, everything else. I had been in my first marriage for 14 years, and I had two children who are with me now. They're 14 and 11. Um, and for many of those years, I felt like I didn't know who I really was. I was trying to live somebody else's life. I was trying to live the American dream. And that didn't work out. So we divorced, and I went right from the frying pan into the fire. I ended up meeting and falling in love with um, a man who has a good heart but does not know how to function in a relationship. And I say that with all due respect because it's difficult to have a healthy relationship with an emotionally unstable person.
Oh, been there, girl. Yes, I
Yeah.
understand.
So there was alcoholism involved, there was abuse involved, and everyone who knew me and loved me couldn't understand why I would stay in that situation, and neither could I, honestly. I just felt powerless to get out. So after some years of therapy, I had an awakening, and I realized that it was when my therapist said to me, Dee, what is it about this relationship that makes you want to stay? What lights you up, and why are you so in love? And I said, well, immediately I knew the answer. He reminds me of home. And she goes, okay, well, you know that you grew up in a dysfunctional home. You know, you had a lot of pain. You know that obviously your father was an alcoholic, all these different things. And so to say that reminds you of home, you realize you're then inviting chaos into your life. And that just shook me up because I could not believe that I couldn't see that. So it changed me. And I wish I could say I just was like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. It doesn't work like that, right?
Hmm.
So I went into a deep depression. I started grieving the loss of the belief and the hope of what I thought it was going to be. And I knew I had to get out. So I didn't want to go into 2019 without having made a definite um, move to change my life. And so I filed for divorce on New Year's Eve of 2018. 2 months later, I started a new job, a leadership position in a leading healthcare organization. Couple months after that, I bought my first house on my own, moved my kids and I out of the home that we had been living in and accustomed to, renovated this house we live in now, put them in new schools, and in a last-ditch attempt to save the marriage, my then husband went into rehab for alcoholic recovery, and I realized after a few months, this isn't going to work. So the whole time I'm going through all of these changes and I'm just trying to keep up appearances. It's like I was keeping my head above water, and anybody else on the outside wouldn't have known all that was going on the inside, right? So when I finally realized in August that it was not going to change, I finalized the divorce on August 9th, and 13 days later, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. And to say that that was a shock, in some ways it was, and in some ways it wasn't, because I had known deep within me something was wrong. I didn't know exactly what. There was one morning about a month and a half before my diagnosis where I was showering and I was just feeling a little uncomfortable, and I was kind of stretching out and, just kind of touching around, seeing what's going on. And I felt this large lump that was hard as steel. And I just knew, but I didn't want to face it. I wasn't ready to face it. So I just pretended like it wasn't happening. I asked my best friend to hold me accountable. I'm like, I need to get a mammogram. The crazy thing is, I was turning 40 in June of 2019. And because I'm the baby of the family, my family literally still refers to me as the baby, even though I don't have babies anymore.
Right.
So I was so excited about turning 40. I'm like, yes, I'm finally going to be taken seriously, and I'm going to be a grown up. And like, I had all these beliefs about what it meant to be 40. So I turned 40, and then 6 weeks later, hey, guess what? You got cancer. So that knocked me off it knocked the wind out of my sail, because when you get that news, you just don't, first of all, you don't ever expect to truly hear it. And the very first thing that went through my mind was my kids. I'm like, I can't have cancer. My kids need me. This can't be happening. So I went through the stages of grief with that too, with denial, all the testing they put me through, all the pressure. There's a lot of pressure that comes with a cancer diagnosis that most people don't realize, because you've gotten what could be perceived as the worst news of your life at that point. And now you have to make life-changing decisions that will change the course of your life, no matter what you do. So trying to figure out, okay, am I going to have this mastectomy, and am I going to follow, all the things that they're telling me I need to do? And I really didn't know what to do. So I kind of checked out mentally, and I started just figuring out something fun to do. And I started playing around. I started suddenly having an interest in butterflies, as you can see from my wall. I just started exploring my creativity and finding pretty things, because it was easier than dealing with all the other stuff. I needed a separation in my mind. So it moved pretty quickly. And in late October, I had a double mastectomy. The following month, I ended up with some complications from that. I had to have a second major surgery. So within 2 months, I had 2 major surgeries that I was trying to recover from. All the while, just in disbelief of what was happening to my life. At that point, I still didn't fully know myself. I didn't know what was missing. I felt like I was doing all that I could to check off all the boxes. And, I had the career, I had the house, I got rid of the toxic relationship, I had, healthy kids, and yet I was not fulfilled at all. I wasn't fulfilled. So that really got me to thinking, oh my God, I can't die before I've actually lived my life, because I didn't know what life I was supposed to be living. And so at that point, I just started sort of going inward. And I think that's normal, having a journey inward to say, what's missing? What's going on here? And I started researching cancer, like what are the causes? I just delved into it, like with everything in me to figure out, could I have caused this? Is there some link between mind, body, and spirit that I'm missing? And yeah, there's a big link, at least for me. And so I realized it was all the resentment and pain and anger I had carried from childhood through the marriages, to that point. And I couldn't let it go until I realized it could take my life.
Let me stop you right there, okay?
Uh-huh.
Now, that's why I say your story is so important, because you have been through every transition imaginable
Yeah.
at a young age, right?
Yeah.
Where you went through the divorce, trying to work that out, trying to get it back together. It didn't work out. Then you get your diagnosis, you go through the surgeries, you do all this stuff. When you are in that, and when you were in that process, the the kind of pressure that you said that you were under, and you wasn't sure, what was going on and everything, how was the environment around you? What were the people who were considered to be your tribe? How was that?
That's a very interesting question. I'm so glad you asked, because it was very fragmented. It was fragmented because, um, as you know, in an abusive relationship, your abuser needs to isolate you and, get you to the point where you don't even trust the people who know you and love you the most. And so they isolate you and surround you with their flying monkeys, is
That's right.
term, right? Who all are there to encourage you to stay in the situation. And that's what happened. At that point, I hadn't been on speaking terms with my mom for a couple of years. That was really, really difficult. The friends that I had, many of them were from him. And the friends that weren't, I hadn't invested in the relationships, because it is so draining to be with someone who literally tries to consume all of you. And I had nothing left to give.
And that's why I wanted to point that out, because, DeAndra, most of the time, us as women, we don't look at the environment around us just to see how narcissistic people, right?
Yeah.
Narcissistic people
Yes.
try to isolate us, try to make sure that we are in their environment, how they control us. We think
Yes.
it's love,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God, he wants to be around me all the time, and he wants this and everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And his
And,
family
and
adores me.
his family adores me, and everything is great, right? Then we sit and we say, you know what? Maybe this is what life is supposed to be. I tell the women all the time, when we talk in the morning, I say, you know what? The dream that I had for myself in my head for what a marriage was supposed to be was
Mm-hmm.
my dream.
Yes.
It
Yes.
wasn't the reality I was living,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
because you try to hold on to that dream so much because you don't want to let it go,
Yes.
you start to see, and it starts to unravel, like, damn, this is not what life is. But you know what? Most of us, people who have came from broken homes and abused homes, we condition ourselves to think that, damn, when we get older, you know, I am going to have the best family, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to
Yes.
be like that.
Yes. Right. Right.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But every damn time, and it does not matter, you just don't know how programmed and
Yes.
brainwashed you are
Yes.
until you step out and you have your own relationship and you see how damn similar it is to when you
Mm-hmm.
were younger.
Yes.
Because those are
Absolutely.
the things that you can take,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can
Yes.
take the abuse, you can take the
Yes.
alcoholism, you can take
Mhm.
all that because that's familiar to you.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then when you look at it, you know, if you was in a home with your mom and dad, what was your mom like? What was the stuff that she was going through? Or your dad? Did you see yourself later, a little bit of your mom or your dad in yourself when you were going through that? Did you
Oh,
really
yeah.
see the cycle repeating?
I did only when I was willing to look. And
Mm,
most times I was not willing because once you're willing to look at it for what it is, now you got to do something about it
true.
because you can't unsee it.
Mm-mm.
Right. And so I remember having a conversation with him, many conversations with him as I was going through therapy. And he would often say, you know, Dee, you're figuring out who you are. You're going to go through all this therapy and all this healing and stuff. And one day you're going to wake up and you're going to look at me and say, what the hell am I doing with this guy? And I said, you know, that says everything about you and nothing about me.
Yep.
Because if you're already aware of that, then it's inevitable that that day will come. And sure enough, the day came. And, you know, at the same time, they say we go back to our abusers an average of 7 times. It's hard to get to untangle. I didn't know trauma bonds. I didn't know narcissistic abuse. I didn't know any of these things that I do today.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you don't know, again, you, like you said, you go towards what's familiar because it's comfortable and it feels good. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, there were messages, mixed messages that I received growing up that were replicated in my marriage, such as, I love you, go away.
Yep.
Like, I love you, but, you know, I didn't find out till later that meant, I don't want you to see me in my darkness, in my pit, and drinking myself to numbness. So I'm actually trying to protect you. But
Mm-hmm.
there's so much dysfunction there that for me feeling it, I'm like, okay, well, he just wants me to get more sleep. I don't know. It's like I was trying to rationalize everything. And that's what I found myself doing. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until I would start talking about it out loud that I would realize this doesn't make sense. And if I was looking at it from somewhere, like looking at somebody else's situation, I would have been able to see it clearly. But for me, it's difficult because it's reinforced. I'm the only one that loves you.
Yep.
Nobody understands you like I do. Nobody understands me like I do. I've never been loved like you before. And, you know, I don't know what I would do without this relationship. All these things that they put in your mind. And I'm not trying to put the blame squarely on
Oh
him.
no, no,
It's
no,
not
no.
about
I understand
that.
exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
It's and ultimately I would say to him repeatedly, you know, we keep going through these cycles of drama. All I really want is to love you and be loved in return. And that was what I was wanting. So when I was going through the dark period of getting diagnosed to, say, January after my second surgery when I was in recovery, that's when I really began to realize I gotta let go of some of this stuff. And the more research that I did, the more I understood that there is one path to inner harmony, and that is through forgiveness and self-love. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's how you
I
get
I had and still a little bit have the issues of just letting go,
there.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing.
Yes.
Because I always saw my grandmother always holding on and taking people back, and
Mm-hmm.
even her children and the
Mm-hmm.
the people that she was with. So
Yes.
for me, it was like, if you don't forgive, then is something wrong with you. So you had this revolving door where it was like, oh, you can cuss me out, you can say this and that, but we can always come back. We can always do this. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not until you wake up and you
Yes.
say, well, you know what? I'm going to set a boundary for myself
Right.
where
Yeah.
at this particular time, you know what? I don't have to listen to what you say. I don't have to let you back in. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, if
Mm-hmm.
you reject me, I do not have to be running after you saying,
Exactly.
come and get me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because
Yes.
it's like you said, it builds up so much where it starts to affect you physically. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a lot of us women don't know why we have diabetes, hypertension, even fibroids, and all this stuff because we
Yes.
have so much resentment. We
Yes.
have this thing where we are afraid to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
We are afraid to let go and understand that we don't have it all together,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know, and we
Yes.
keep that pressure on us to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it makes us physically sick,
It exactly does. Yes, it
you
does.
know.
Yeah. And trying to come out of that when even the people who love you, are trying to be supportive and not realizing that some of this is not helpful. And I'll give you an example. Because you use the word vulnerable, that was a very difficult word for me to even wrap my mind around, let alone try to allow myself to be vulnerable. I was so
Absolutely.
disconnected from my feelings. I've been studying self development, for my whole life, as far as I can remember, like back in middle school. I had an intellectual understanding of it. I knew how to set goals and achieve them, but my head and my heart were like in different worlds. And so it got to the point where I had to start letting myself feel my feelings. And that
Say that
is
out
so
loud, girl.
hard to
Say
do.
that
I'm
out
telling you.
loud, girl.
And
You
when
got
you
to
don't,
allow yourself to
yes,
feel your feelings. You have
yes,
to allow
yes,
yourself to feel your feelings because
exactly.
that is the only way that you start to get in touch with your spirit. And it is okay to feel them because if
Yes.
you bottle them up,
Mm-hmm.
you get that you affect yourself physically.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, without question.
Mm.
And I realized that, my mom, bless her heart, she means well. She loves me so much. She one day called me when I was on my way. I was about to go to the doctor, and it was for a follow up, and I knew it wasn't going to be good. So I was crying. And I come from a family of very strong women, and we we lift each other up to be strong, right? Like, you're stronger than this. I
That's
raised you
right.
better than that. You can handle this. You got
That's
this.
right. You got this. Walk
And
through it, girl. It's
yeah.
okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I said, you know what? Right now, this is how I feel, and I'm okay to cry.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that I'm weak. It means I'm feeling it. And so I became like keenly aware of anybody trying to shut my feelings down, and not in a way that she was trying to be like, disrespectful or rude or mean. She just didn't want to see me suffer or in pain.
Right.
And that's what we do with our loved ones. Same with our children. We don't want to see them in pain. And so we're trying to fix stuff, not realizing all we're doing is covering it up. We're not solving anything. So I got to the point where I said, I got to figure out how I feel, because how else am I going to understand who I am?
Mm-hmm.
And during that process, I also figured out there's one way to learn who you really are, and that's by learning who you are not.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to look back at all these experiences that I was having, and I'm like, okay, I'm not that. And it started with even just my thoughts, saying, hey, you know what? I'm not my thoughts. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I'm
That's
not my
right.
feelings. I have feelings. I'm not even my body. I experience different things in my body, but
Mm-hmm.
I am greater than all of that.
That
And
is
I
right.
didn't know that. And so once I got to the study of forgiveness, that was like the breaking point for me, because I finally came to an understanding, growing up in the church, and it's, forgive, Jesus forgave, turn the other cheek, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good unless you know what to do with that, like what that means, how to let that go. Because turning the other cheek, but still holding on to the pain and stuff, that's not going to solve anything. It's only going to make the situation worse. So I learned that in order to forgive, I had to accept everything about what had happened to me and for me, because I had to accept it was for my highest good.
Come on.
And I'm telling you, it got to the point where I'm like, oh, the person that I need to forgive the most is me.
Yes, girl.
I had to forgive myself for decisions that I made when I was at a lower level of consciousness, and I did not yet have the healing that unfortunately or fortunately cancer brought to me.
That's right.
That wake-up call. And so in learning to forgive myself, I learned to also embrace myself for who I was. And I started looking almost like I was a different person, looking back at this woman that I was 5-10 years ago. And realizing when I was saying to my ex-husband, all I want to do is love you and be loved in return, I started saying that to the mirror. All I want to do is love you and be loved in return. And I became my own, I started falling in love with myself. I started literally singing love songs to myself. I started singing like Through the Fire by Shaka Khan to myself. I would wake up and just give myself a hug. I mean, I realized all this love that I was giving away, I was the one who needed it the most.
That's right.
I didn't have it.
That's
And
right.
all the love I was wanting him to give me, he was incapable of giving me because only I could fill that void. Only I could, together with my understanding, my relationship with God, my spirituality, bringing that all together and recognizing it can't come externally. That's not how it works, because all change begins from the inside out. So in forgiving myself, I also had to recognize that those who hurt me in the past, they were struggling with their own things. A lot of it didn't even have anything to do with me. It wasn't about me.
That's right.
And they were making decisions just like I was in darkness. And once that light of awareness opens up, it's like, oh my goodness, there is a whole new life waiting for me.
And it's easy to forgive at that point.
Yes.
A lot of people ask me, how come you and your ex-husband have such a great relationship? You know, where he did this and that or whatever. And I tell them, I said, because I forgave him. You know, when you understand that that person had their own stuff going on, and they could not be that fantasy you had in your head. They could not be that because they had their own stuff going on. They had their own challenges and insecurities and lack of self-love and everything that they were going through.
Yes.
They couldn't possibly give you this fantasy that you were looking for because one, you really didn't tell them what it is. And when you did tell them, they couldn't hear you anyway because they didn't feel that for themselves.
Exactly.
So you would never get it. So putting that pressure on someone else to fulfill this fantasy is not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Ever.
No.
You have to be able to find that within you because that's where it starts. That self-love that you're looking for is within you. So you're going through your recovery period. You get through the recovery period and everything. Now you had this, wonderful awakening of life.
Yes.
What I also tell the ladies is, how many signs did you get? Because, it's funny how God is where, first he throws a pebble, right?
Yes.
And he hitting you with that pebble real hard. And you just feel like it's annoying, but you just ignore it. Next thing you know, it turns into a rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the next thing you know, it turns into a boulder.
Yes.
And it smacks you down.
Yes.
Right? Did you have those signs in your journey?
Oh my goodness. Yes. On every level of my life, I had those signs. During the marriage. I had already had workaholic tendencies because I knew I just wanted to be at a certain level in my life financially. And it also took me away from dealing with the things that I didn't want to deal with in my marriage. So I would work 10, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week sometimes. And I started the fatigue, the fatigue kept setting in. And then when you're married to an alcoholic, they want to make sure you're drinking just as much as they're drinking.
Absolutely.
So I drank wine and he drank his vodka and stuff. He would constantly keep my wine glass full. And it finally dawned on me, if I don't drink the wine, he can't keep refilling it. And so then he's got to deal with the fact that he's had 4 drinks and I'm still on my first glass. Now, what does that mean? Right. So the feelings that I was experiencing of I felt lost. And then one thing after another happened in the relationship, as does in any toxic relationship. And I knew I got to get out of this. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And so going through the divorce, once I was diagnosed, you would think I would have said, okay, well, at least I don't have to deal with him anymore. No, opposite. Because he's the one who knows me the best.
That's right. And he's the only one around you when you start to look, your family and everyone, he done alienated you. So you sitting there like, well, he's the only one I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And my kids, it's him and my kids.
That's it. Exactly. And so I invited him back in because he's like, I'm going to be there for you, whether you like it or not. And I'm going to take care of you and this and that. And I think he had the right intentions, but as with any narcissist, everything becomes about them, right? So me having cancer transitioned to, oh, my poor wife, he still hadn't accepted our divorce. So now he became the superhero who was saving his poor little wife from, having to deal with cancer. So all these things were happening, and leading up to my mastectomy, I felt like I need something to look forward to because I don't know what my life is going to be like after this. So I ended up investing in myself in a coaching program, not to become a coach. That's what was funny. I was trying to figure myself out.
That's right.
And during that program, it was a 6-month intensive program. I learned so much about myself that I think I learned in 6 months what it would have taken me a lifetime to figure out without it. And that's the difference I always say with therapy and coaching. My therapy helped me come to terms with my past. Mm-hmm. The coaching helped me create a new future and see what my life could be.
Absolutely.
And so I started working on different exercises that I take my clients through right now, which is called I See Myself. Mm-hmm. And so I started writing out all these visions of how I could see myself, the highest vision of myself that I could possibly have. And the more I did it, and then I would record myself saying it, I would get up in the morning, I would listen to it. Good morning, Dee. You are such an amazing woman. You are loved with an everlasting love. You are divinely guided by your higher self. Like all these different things, every single day, I started reprogramming my mind. And I started realizing too that just like a tree, if you were to drive through the Midwest in the middle of winter, all the trees look completely dead.
Right.
And that's what I felt like dead on the inside, that I was dying. Well, I was dying, not necessarily my whole body, but the woman that I used to be was dying.
Come on, girl.
And she was fighting for her life. She didn't want to die. No entity wants to die, including your ego. And so it's like, well, but we can't do this. We don't know how to do this. What do we? And I'm like, you know what? It's going to be okay. Because I'm like that tree that looks like in the dead of winter, but there is life inside me, and I know it. I know it to be true.
Yeah.
So experiencing that and being guided to all these different books and mentors and things that just opened up a whole new life for me. I realized I want to set every woman free that I can possibly set free by helping her find that within herself, because
Right.
I can't give it to you. You have to find
Exactly.
it. But I can guide you to it by asking you the questions that we're afraid to ask ourselves typically.
Absolutely.
You know, we don't know our own limited beliefs. We only know what seems normal until somebody points it out. And then you start
Mhm.
questioning. So it's been definitely a journey.
You've been reborn.
I've
You
been,
know, that's how I look at it. You have
yes,
been reborn.
yes.
The divorce, the diagnosis, and all of
Mhm,
that stuff.
mhm.
That was the that stuff you had to get out of you,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That thing that was holding you back from
Mhm.
becoming the woman that you are now.
Exactly.
And I tell the women, like, you know, sometimes when we don't listen and it bottles up and we
Mhm,
hit rock bottom and there's
mhm,
nobody there but you and God, you can
mhm.
always crawl out because it's
Yeah.
you and him.
Yes,
It
yes.
is you and him. And
Mhm,
when you are in the trenches in that coaching program, building yourself back up, climbing up that wall, figuring
mhm,
out who you are,
mhm,
making sure that you feed your mind, you feed your body, and you're doing what you're supposed to do.
mhm. Yes.
You could take a picture now, girl, and see exactly what you look like, right? Isn't that amazing?
It's
Right?
amazing.
Isn't
It's
that amazing?
amazing.
You be like,
Yes.
damn,
Right.
this is what my life is supposed to
Yes.
be.
Yes. This is who I am. And you know, I'll
Absolutely.
tell you, I gotta tell you one more thing too. That
Uh,
really a big aha moment that really freed me. So I grew up my whole life knowing that I was supposed to be a boy. My mom wanted a son, and I didn't really have Barbie dolls when I was little. I was given Hot Wheels to play with, and like it just, I don't know. I felt this sense of rejection my entire life for having disappointed my mom for being
mhm.
a girl. And once I went through the mastectomy, I went through the extra surgery, I had gotten to the point where I'm like, anything I need to know, I'm just going to go ahead and ask, because
Right,
what am I waiting for? You know? So
right.
I finally asked my mom. I said, I need to know why did you want me so badly to be a boy, or what was that about? And she said, Dee, first of all, back in those days, we didn't have ultrasounds to find out what the sex of the baby. So it was all these wives' tales, and everybody told me I was having a boy.
Right.
So that started. But more importantly, she said, I wanted you to be a man because I felt like you would have an easier life than I did as a man.
Wow. Wow.
So for 40 years, I'm carrying around this spirit of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
when in fact it was her wanting to give me what she didn't have, love me, and see me experience a life that she didn't have. And that freed me up in so many ways. She doesn't even know how much it changed my life to know that I was loved and accepted from the beginning. It was just a misguided way of trying to help me be the best version of myself.
And most of the time it is that way. Where
Yes.
we that's that's why I say you have to forgive your
Mm-hmm.
parents, your
Mm-hmm.
guardians, and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, only because they're only doing the
The
best
best they
they
can.
can
Yes.
with what
Yes.
they have. And you
That's
have to
right.
understand that they are only doing what they were taught.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. And so
Exactly.
when you become aware, when you become self aware, and
Mm-hmm.
you start to get on this journey,
Mm-hmm.
you start to forgive a lot of things because
Yes.
they didn't do it on purpose. Nobody
Mm-mm.
wants to hurt another one on purpose.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Nobody wanted to abuse you. Nobody didn't want to do all these things, but they
Right.
just didn't know how.
Yes. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
They didn't
Yeah.
know how. They didn't know what to do. They
Mm-hmm.
were a product of their environment and
Mm-hmm.
they were doing what their mom and their
Mm-hmm.
dad or whoever
Mm-hmm.
raised them was doing. And so were
Mm-hmm.
you. See, and that's
Exactly.
the thing that we don't want to
Yes.
profess
Mm-hmm.
in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
were we.
Yep.
So while you're in dysfunction, you're used to dysfunction, I'm used to nurturing that shit. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes.
so here we are going back and forth trying to see how we can make this work
Mm-hmm.
where we're not doing anything but repeating the cycle from
That's
where we
it.
came from,
That's it.
right?
Yes. Yes. It's inevitable.
That's
It's
why it's important to get coached,
mm-hmm.
to do therapy, because you
Mm-hmm.
need that outside person to
Exactly.
keep you accountable for
Mm-hmm.
who you really want to be. Can you talk about
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of being a coach and getting coached. It all ties together because it makes you realize, okay, I could take radical responsibility for my life, which means
Exactly.
everything that has occurred, good, bad, or indifferent, all of it, I can take accountability for it. Because then, if I have the accountability, now I have the power to do something about it. But as long as it was this person who did it to me and they did me this way and that way, well, then now you've given all your power away. So when you know that you actually have the power, now you have the power to make different decisions. Dr. Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. I say, when we know differently, we choose differently. And then we create different life experiences. But how can we do that if we're still swirling around with the same mindset? If we're still, in codependency and don't even know what codependent behaviors we're displaying, and don't know that we're self-sabotaging because of fear. All these things are happening inside. And we think, well, if I change jobs or if I change my this or change that, then things are going to get better. That's not how it works. Wherever you go, there you are.
You're taking yourself with you. You carry yourself
You're
around with you
carrying
everywhere
all of
you
it.
go.
Yes, yes. And so
So,
once you change your mind about it, though, I developed a new understanding about money. I had a new understanding about my connection to God, my connection to this world, my oneness with everyone.
mhm.
And I read this analogy, which has really, really changed my life too. So, an orange tree, if you've ever seen an orange tree or an orange grove,
Yep.
oranges don't have seeds. They
Mhm.
don't reproduce by seeds like apples or pears and stuff.
Right.
So they just come from the tree. And you can pick all the oranges from a tree, and it's just going to signal to the tree, keep producing more oranges.
Mm.
Right. And so, me as the tree and God as my source that I'm connected to, the oranges, the fruit, all the things that I need and want in life, that comes. All these things are added unto you once you start paying attention to what really matters. And it's not the stuff, it's not the checking off the boxes, it's not even independence. I climbed the independent mountain for so long because I'm like, I don't ever want to have to depend on a man for money. I don't ever want to have to this and that. And I got to the top of that mountain and realized it is lonely up here.
Very.
I don't like it. I don't like this one bit. So that experience helped me realize my happiness comes from being connected to amazing people who truly just care about my well-being, and I care about their well-being, and we just love one another. It's not about what you can do for me or what I can do for you, or let me hook you up with this and that. It's not that.
That's right.
It's having people now in my life that I can call at a moment's notice, who will drop what they're doing and be here for me, and they know I would do the exact same thing. I couldn't allow myself to have those relationships because I had this Teflon tough image going on of, I don't need no help. I'm good. I got it. No, I need a lot of help.
That's right. So
We
how's your
all
health now? How's your health now? How's everything
So
now?
that's a whole different subject because due to the pandemic, I was waiting for my final reconstructive surgery, and it got pushed back again and again, just for my own personal safety, right? And then a series of events happened this summer that ended up having the surgery pushed back again. So I have one breast right now. I have one breast, and I like to say I'm the sexiest one titty chick
Girl,
you've
still
ever.
cute though. Real strong. Still cute though. Shoot. Yes.
And I had to learn, like, my breasts don't make me a woman,
No, they don't.
and they don't change my femininity. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, and so every morning when I have to look in that mirror and see the imperfection that exists on the outside, it makes me that much more grateful for the perfecting that's happening on the inside. Because if I didn't look in that mirror and see how I used to look,
Mm-hmm.
how I wish I could look one day and hope, and let that go and say, this is just who I am today.
That's
I'm gonna
right.
love me for who I am right now, not when this happens, not when, no, today. I don't have a when, I don't have a future. That
Right.
exists in my mind.
Right.
And I don't have a past that exists in my mind too. That's why forgiving is letting go of that past. It doesn't mean the pain never happened or the experience didn't happen. It just means it's not controlling my life no more.
Exactly.
It's not gonna do
And
that.
when you look in the mirror, you are perfectly happy with who you
With
are.
who I
And I
am.
think this pandemic has taught us a lot about connecting with ourselves, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
really seeing ourselves for who we are and really practicing
Yes.
loving ourselves physically,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, emotionally, and cleaning up those things that we need to clean up,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Absolutely.
But every day you're coaching, you're inspiring, just like now, and you're
Mm-hmm.
mentoring. Let
Mm-hmm.
us know your website, how people can follow you. And I want to do an Empower Her session with you. We do Empower Her sessions here where we have virtual workshops with the women, where we come together and we talk about different things. I think you will be perfect for that because we need the women to know that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to
Yes.
let go. It's
Yeah.
okay to have your heart broken. And it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
cry about it being broken.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I would be honored
Because
to do that.
crying is a
Mm-hmm.
release. Crying is
Yes.
a release.
Yes.
Babies do it
Mm-hmm.
to release and let you know that there's something going on. But when it's done, it's done. They're
It's
happy.
done.
But
It's
we stop
exactly that.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We stop
Yes.
that. But let us
Yes.
know everything that you have, your website, how we can follow you and your program.
Absolutely. So that it's funny because my business has taken off before I even started getting everything going, and I'm
Okay.
still working on it, so it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go to DeAndraHarmony.com, and all my contact information is there. You can read the full story. Send me an email, and in fact, if you include in the email "I'm loving me" as the subject line, I can send you a free gift, which is a guided journal that I include for all my clients to help you develop a new mindset and take you through just 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, and then watch these changes start unfolding in your life.
Absolutely.
Social media, it's funny, I'm really not on social media. I, I'm torn about it because I've seen some really good things come from it, and I've seen some terrible things come from it. So I'm working on that. But
Okay.
I'm also accepting, hey, you know what? This is who I am. And I know I'm not the only person who's like, I'm not trying to be around all this fakeness and stuff. I'm
Right.
not saying it all is, but a lot of it is. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
like it. So yeah, if they'll email me, and my contact, like I said, is all on that page. I'm happy to share. And I want to say one more thing about the crying part because that
Yes.
was so powerful what you said. I remember multiple times, but one in particular, one day was so hard for me, when I was in the thick of my recovery, that I wanted to I didn't want to be like a robot for my kids. I wanted them to know that mom is not, Teflon tough. Mom's not superwoman all the time, right? And yet I didn't want to freak them out by now all of a sudden breaking down in front of them because that would have been one extreme to the other.
Right.
So I remember one day I was cooking dinner and all I could think about was I need to get upstairs so I can shower and cry. I need to cry.
Right.
And I couldn't cook dinner fast enough. So I didn't want the kids to see it. So I ended up just going in my bathroom downstairs and looking in the mirror. I started speaking to myself in the mirror as if I was talking to someone else. And I
Absolutely.
know that was God talking to me,
Yes.
saying, I will never, ever, ever leave you. You are never, ever alone.
Mhm.
You are going to be fine. You just have to get through this.
That's right.
And I just kept saying it like it was coming from somewhere deep
Mhm.
within me.
Mhm.
And I still went upstairs and took my shower and cried.
That's right.
And and then I allowed myself to be more vulnerable with my kids. So
That's right.
that whole journey has changed too. They've gotten to see there's power in vulnerability.
It
They don't
is.
see me as a weak woman. I know that. But they
Mhm.
also know mom has feelings now.
That's right.
And they come out when it might not be convenient for you.
I know it.
They're
I would
here.
sit sometimes. I would sit sometimes, and I would say I would look at myself in a mirror, and I would say, you know what? Especially if it was like a heartbreak or a disappointment or something
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just got to remind yourself. And I say, Gloria, you got to understand that everything happens for a reason.
Everything.
Maybe the time is up, and this is the season where you have to push forward.
Yes.
The people that you're around, you're constantly growing, so you have to be able to know and understand who's around you. And I'm saying this to myself because,
Yes.
again, I always feel that is God talking to me, because
Mhm. Mhm.
we are a coach that need to coach ourselves sometimes,
Yes,
right? And
absolutely.
use our own tools, because
Mhm.
we have to remind ourselves, like, hey, look, you are still human too. You are
Mhm.
going to go through this. You are going to mess up.
Yep.
But what you know is that you have self-awareness. And it's like what
Yes.
you said earlier. Once you see it, you can't unsee
You
it,
can't. You can't. And then
right?
there's no going back. You can't go
Exactly.
back to the woman that you used to be.
Exactly.
So,
So
yes.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Thank you
you for
so much
having
for this
me.
wonderful interview. And we'll definitely keep in touch. I really want to do that,
Yeah.
empower her soul, because
Mhm.
I just know that you will help our women as far as giving out the information
Mhm.
of how you live your highest and truest self, because
Yes.
you are a
Yes.
perfect example of that.
Thank
You
you
know what I
so
mean?
much. Thank
So
you. It is a
I
practice, a
I'm
daily
telling
practice.
for the rest of our lives, I
That's
promise
right. Yes.
you.
Yes.
For
Yes.
the rest of our lives. But I thank you so much for being here, ladies. You have it. Please go ahead and follow her
Mhm.
at DeAndraHarmony.com. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
That's correct.
Read her
Yes.
stories, see what she has to offer, send her that email,
Mhm.
grab that journal, and see where it takes you.
Yes.
Thank you, and we'll definitely see you again, okay?
All right. Thank you so much, Gloria.
All right.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Bye.